welcome back to my channel and a really warm welcome if you are new. My name is Gemma and I have a 20-month-old son called Oscar, and I'm currently filming this video in our very new playroom. As you can see, it's not complete yet, our walls are very bare, but it is coming along nicely, and I will be making a video on our playroom when it is completed, so let me know if that is something that you'd like to see. And I just want to start this video by doing a quick disclaimer that YouTube are continuing to block the comment section on my videos. This is in an effort to reduce people being able to make inappropriate comments on videos with children, and you might notice that other YouTubers that you follow, this has happened to their videos as well. It's nothing to do with us. It isn't potentially because anybody has actually made an inappropriate comment, but YouTube are just trying to stamp this out, and it's their way of doing it. It's really unfortunate because I love chatting with you guys in the comment section, and they've blocked quite a few of my videos comments boxes now, but not all of them. So if this one does get blocked, so it will say comments are disabled or something when you scroll down, head over to my Instagram, which is @thewayweplay, and chat to me over there, either on my picture that I post today, or you can DM me if you've got any questions as well. So anyway, let's get into this video. So I'm going to talk about 15 different ways that we can support our toddlers at home with developing their speech. Now, I don't want this to be something that you worry about and compare your child, and it's something that I think we all do. We will see a child the same age or a very similar age to our child, and we immediately think, oh, is my child doing that? Are they moving as well? You know, are they able to run or ride their bike, or are they crawling yet, depending on what age they are? We're constantly, I guess, naturally comparing. But particularly with things as they get older and it's more academic kind of things like speech and learning, it's really important not to make those comparisons, because children all develop in different ways and at different speeds, and it's just not useful. It's not useful for your child, and it's not useful for you to make those comparisons. Oscar is 20 months, as I say, and there is children a similar age who are saying way more than him, and there's also children saying way less than him. So it's not useful to compare, but all you can do is do everything that you can do, possibly, and then just see how your child gets on. We don't want to be pushy parents, you know, getting frustrated when our children aren't doing things, because that's not going to, the whole point is that they are encouraged to talk because they want to talk, and that we're not getting stressed about it. So let me just say that at the beginning. But these are 15 ways that we can just think about in our day-to-day lives that will really support your child in developing their language. I'm a stay-at-home mum, you may be too, or a stay-at-home parent, or you might be working, but these are all things that when you're with your children, you can make a conscious effort to do. Now, despite making YouTube videos, I am not a naturally chatty person. I'm the listener in a group of people, and so it takes me out of my comfort zone to talk more, but that's a big thing really, just being really conscious of communicating more with your child. Obviously, they're not always going to be communicating back with you, so it's kind of almost talking to yourself, but that's, you know, a huge thing. Anyway, let's get into the 15 tips and tricks, I guess. So the first thing that we can do as parents is to slow down. Now that might seem really obvious, but you know, your child is learning language for the first time. A bit like if you were to learn a new language, you would want the person speaking to you to slow down. We talk very fast in our modern world, and our children will be picking up some of the words but not all of them, and possibly because of the speed. And also, when we're thinking about slowing down, it's making sure that when you're speaking to your child that they're looking at you. You know, take the time to wait for them to turn. You know, if you say Oscar, wait for him to turn and look at you so that you can really focus on speaking. They're going to get much more from what you say by being able to watch your mouth and look at your body language than if they're, you know, running about and you're trying to talk to them. The second one is kind of following on from the first, and it is to make sure that you're always looking at your child and getting down to their level as much as possible. I know that when I am saying something to Oscar, if I really get down to his level and say it, you can tell in his facial expression that it's gone in much better than if I was standing up and he was standing up, and there's that height difference. This is particularly prevalent if he's upset about something, or he's just had a tantrum, and I'm trying to explain, the situation and why he couldn't do something. This morning he was trying to turn the washing machine off. Now, if I was just carrying on washing up and I said, Oscar, stop turning the washing machine off, and he's just there madly pushing buttons, he's not getting what I'm trying to say to him. So just taking the time, stop, get down at their level, look them in the eye and explain. So, Oscar, we can't touch the washing machine when it's on because then it will turn off and we need it to keep going. And if you're saying that to his face, at his level, he's going to much more frequently understand what you're saying and develop that language. He's going to hear much more of those words in that sentence because he's really focused on what you're saying. The third tip I have is to make sure that you wait. And this is a difficult one. And often it's something that I notice that other people do, and I don't see it in myself, but of course I'm probably doing it. And it is asking a child something and not giving them the time to respond. Now, they are young and they are learning language for the first time, and processing takes a bit longer. So if you've asked them to do something, you've asked them a question, just give them that extra few seconds to respond, because it might come. The next tip I have is something that I think most of us are guilty of, that we really need to think about why we're doing it, and that is to stop naming things and start communicating. So there is this, I don't even know what to call it, but this boastfulness, is it? Or I don't know, but where we get our children to name things that we already know they know the name of. So we open a book and we know they know what a cow is, but we're going to ask them anyway, what's that? It's a cow. What sound does the cow make? Moo. And we might even get our phones out and film it and put it on Facebook. Look, my child can name all the animals and they know all the sounds. Okay, great. But what are they learning from that? And I think this was one of the things that frustrated me most when I was teaching in schools, was that we were constantly testing children on things that we already knew that they knew. And it just seemed pointless. We could actually be spending our time more fruitfully learning new things rather than testing things we already know that they know. So I think we get very proud of what our children can do, and I'm guilty of it, that Oscar might have said something new that day, and obviously my husband's at work, and when he comes home I want him to say that new word or whatever it might be, and I'll say, Oscar can say please now, which is what he did the other day. His first time he said please, and so, Oscar, can you say please this time? Okay, he said it before, do we need the pressure on saying it again? I know that he can say it now, and so I'll encourage him in conversation, but I don't need to keep testing him to say it unnecessarily. So spending more time on purely just communicating and learning new things is much more fruitful than constantly testing and naming things that we already know that they know. Of course that's brilliant that they're learning language, and of course be excited that they can say it again, but really focus more on what's new to learn on that page in the book. So yes, we know cow, but where is the cow? Is the cow in the field? Oh, what a lovely green grass that is. And developing that language rather than really focusing on what they know already. My next tip is to have a good look at what toys you have available for your child, and really try to get rid of and stop buying toys that have marketing that suggests that it's going to teach your child this and that, colours and numbers and songs, and these are toys that do things for your child and aren't encouraging your child to do something in return. So they sing the song, they flash their lights, they have the numbers, they move around, or whatever it might be. We want toys that are open-ended and encourage communication. So toys that don't do, but your child does with them. So things like train track or car track or blocks or shopping baskets and fruits and vegetables and role play items. All of these sorts of toys will encourage your child to communicate rather than having things communicating at them and then being very passive in play. My next tip is to limit screen time or stop it altogether, and definitely don't have the TV on as background noise. There's lots and lots of research about the effects TV has on children, screen time, but also on just having the TV on whilst they're playing. When children have that background noise of TV, they are much less likely to communicate in play because they already hear that conversation going on, and so they don't feel like they're needing to make those noises and sounds and chat that they would be doing if they were playing. I will link some articles in the description box if that's something that you would like to learn more about, because I find it fascinating that, you know, even if you're not having your child sit in front of a screen, just having it on in the background has such a negative impact on their speech development. Okay, the next one might obviously seem obvious, but it is to read, and it is to read lots of different books on a variety of different topics, but also books that interest your child. So Oscar is fascinated with vehicles, and no matter how many books I try to encourage him to read, he will always gravitate to the ones with vehicles involved. So my challenge at the moment is to find great stories that still involve vehicles, because I find that often the books that involve trucks and diggers and motorbikes or whatever are those just plain books that are kind of just the pictures. There's no story going on, it's just naming the types of tractor, which I'm very good at. But there's no story involved. So if you have any good tips about books that have vehicles in that are story based, please let me know, because I am on the hunt. But it is also about reading around the story. So finding books that have great illustrations and lots of things to talk about other than what's actually happening in the story. I find at this age, Oscar has obviously a limited attention span for the actual story that's going on, but he is really enjoying the illustrations. So being able to pick out things in the pictures and talking about those, and talking about whether we have seen those or whether we have them in our house or whether we've seen them on our walk, or, you know, building in that language of, oh, we've seen it in our book, and then we see it when we're outside, or we see it when we're home, or when we see it when we're at the supermarket, or whatever it might be. Building those connections of these items and seeing them in different scenarios really supports your child's language development. The next tip is to sing. Now, I am not the best singer, and I really struggle with this one because of that, I think. I know lots and lots of songs and nursery rhymes, but it wouldn't be something that I gravitate towards in my week of singing. But there's lots of research to suggest that children take on language much more easily when it is in a song or a poem, or, you know, that kind of sing-songy rhyme. So to try to get as much singing involved as you can, you might want to have it on a tape and sing along to it. I actually take Oscar to a music class once a week, and I find that really helps, and then we sing the songs that were from the class. So that's something that you could do if you're not naturally musical like I am. The next one is to really encourage your body language when you talk. And if you have done anything like baby sign language, that really supports your child. So I never did a class on baby sign language, but I kind of picked up the main ones like please and thank you. Oscar still does more and says the word, although he's changed it to this, which is just his adaptation of it. So asking for more, he says more now, but he still does the sign. That really supports your child if they're not quite at that verbal stage. They're still able to communicate, and they're understanding that when you ask a question, an answer is involved. Whether they can say the answer, whether they can sign the answer, is already developing that understanding of conversation. Okay, my next tip is to commentate on your life. Now this one is a bit of a struggle and doesn't seem natural, but it really, really works. So talking out everything you're doing, so self-commentating. So if I'm making Oscar's lunch, often that's the time when he starts to get frustrated. But if I literally commentate like a sports commentator would do on a football match or whatever it might be, I just talk out everything I'm doing. So I'm just going to get a plate for you, Oscar, and I'm going to put the bread in the toaster, and I need to find an avocado. Where would the avocados be? He goes and gets the avocado, and oh, I need to cut the avocado now. What would I use to cut the avocado? And he knows knife now, and he knows the word cut. And so he'll, fill in the gaps for me as I'm commentating on my life. My next tip is to expand on the things that they say. So at the moment, Oscar has a handful of words, or maybe a bit more than a handful, but he has a few words that he's able to say confidently. And so when he is able to say them, then I just expand on words that link to that word. So he's able to, I mentioned this before, he was able to say cut first before he could say knife. And because cut is a much easier word than knife, he would see the knife and he would say cut, 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 and understand that you cut with a knife. And so I just would always respond to that with, yes, I'm cutting with my knife, or you're cutting with your knife. And so just adding to the word that he's able to say and bringing an association with words that are linked to that really supports them as well. So my next tip is to model the language that you're asking or you're wanting to hear. And again, by exposing your child to the language and saying it out loud is how they're going to learn it. So if you want your child to, so if we think about manners, so if you want your child to be able to say please or thank you, then you need to model that language. So at the moment, Oscar knows more, so he's eating and he does this instead of this, and he'll say more. And so I'm just modeling now what I want him to say on top of that. So it might be, if he's, more cheese. So I'll say, more cheese? And he'll say, more. And I'll say, yes, more cheese, please. And then I'll give it to him, and then I'll say, thank you. And just modelling the language that I want him to say really supports him in understanding, the rules of our language. So yes, we ask for something and we say please, and when we receive it, we say thank you. Now, I'm not waiting and necessarily expecting him to say thank you, but I'm just modelling that language. And then eventually he starts to pick up on it and he begins to learn. My next tip is to give your child two choices when you're asking them a question. And I find this is a really essential one if your child is not yet able to communicate both the possible answers. So, for example, if Oscar is asking for some fruit and we have the bowl of fruit on our table and he's kind of just grunting and pointing, that's when I'll give him the choices and communicate the language with him. So I'll say something like, would you like a banana or a kiwi? Banana or kiwi? And so he's hearing the language and then is more able to say, where he says banana or kiwi, however he says it. And so he's hearing the language. Another quick tip amongst this tip is to not use your child's word for the actual item. So Oscar says banana, and it's very tempting and cute to say, would you like a banana? Rather than banana. And obviously, if you think about that logically, that's going to be reinforcing the wrong word. But it's something that we might naturally do. So just as a side note to the two options tip, just make sure that you're not using their broken English or whatever they're trying to say word, but use the correct word all the time. The next tip is to make sure that you verbalize your daily routines. This is where your child's going to pick up the most language because they experience it every day, and it's probably going to be the first words that they begin to learn. So during nappy changes or bath time or bedtime, make sure you're picking out those words and communicating with your child all these routines that they're doing. So yeah, I'm going to change your nappy now. I need the nappy and I need the wipes, and I'm going to lay the mat out and really put emphasis on the nouns and the words that you really want them to hear. So nappy and wipes and mat. And then they're able to, grasp those things and say, Oscar now says nappy, and I can't say wipes yet, but I continue to repeat it. And finally, my last tip is to make sure that you try to use more statements than questions. With children particularly, we tend to ask a lot of questions, and often they result in a yes or no answer, and that stunts our conversation. You'll notice when you talk to adults, you don't particularly just speak in questions, and yet sometimes when we're talking with children, we talk entirely in questions. And it is difficult because they're not talking back to us. So it is, asking questions to prompt them into thinking things, or asking, what's going on in their head. But if you are going to ask a question, try to make it an open-ended question. So those are the questions that start with why, who, when, why, where, what. So if it's a spill on the floor, Oscar will always say, mop, mop. And I'll say, I think we need to clear that up. So as a statement. And then use an open-ended question if you can. So, where is the mop, Oscar? Do you think you can find it? And get him to, where is the mop? It's in the cupboard, or whatever it might be. So developing their language through statements and allowing them to hear that language rather than just constant questions and yes and no's or one-word answers is really going to support your child. I really hope this video has been helpful. What I'm going to do over on my Instagram is put together all of these tips onto one page that you can screenshot. I think that's probably the most useful thing. So although you've heard of the tips, and I'll pop them all down in the description box as well, head over to my Instagram and I will put a highlight in my Insta stories so that you can go over and screenshot all of these tips so that you have them. I think a lot of them we probably do naturally, but some of them, for me particularly, are unnatural, and I do have to make a conscious effort to do them. But we're all doing our best, and I really encourage you, again, not to compare your child, but just do everything you can to expose them to whatever your language is. Thank you for watching this week's video, and I really hope it has been helpful and that you'll come back to my channel soon. Don't forget to subscribe and give it a thumbs up. And again, if you can't comment because YouTube has blocked my comments, head over to my Instagram and chat with me over there. Hope to see you again next week. Bye.